When people talk about traditional heating, they usually stop at the wood stove. Burn more wood, get more heat, survive the winter. Vikings lived in a world where that thinking would have failed quickly. In large parts of Scandinavia, wood was limited, winters were relentless, and storms could isolate families for weeks. If warmth depended on feeding a fire day and night, entire communities would have collapsed. Instead, Vikings developed a system that went far beyond the stove. They built homes that captured every scrap of warmth and refused to let it escape. This was not folklore or comfort living. It was survival engineering refined over generations. Why Vikings treated heat as a resource to conserve, not something to endlessly create. The core Viking insight was simple and ruthless. Heat is precious, and wasting it is deadly. Fire was useful, but it was not the foundation of warmth. The foundation was preventing loss. Every warm body, cooked meal, animal, and ray of winter sunlight mattered. Viking homes were designed to trap this warmth inside thick materials and release it slowly over time. You can apply this thinking immediately by shifting focus. Before adding heat, ask where it is escaping. Drafts, thin walls, open ceilings, and unused space are the real enemies. Vikings would never have heated a room they did not actively live in. Viking homes actually used the ground itself to stabilize indoor temperatures. Many Viking longhouses were built partially into the earth. This was a calculated decision, not just a matter of convenience. Soil maintains a relatively stable temperature throughout the year, and in winter it's often warmer than the air. By sinking floors and anchoring walls into the ground, Vikings reduced temperature swings and protected themselves from wind. Modern homes can borrow this principle without, rebuilding everything from scratch. Insulating foundations properly, adding earth berms to exterior walls, or using lower-level rooms as primary living spaces during winter all take advantage of ground temperature stability. Basements, when used correctly, are actually closer to Viking logic than modern living rooms. Why Viking walls mattered more than fires ever could. Viking walls were thick, heavy, and layered. Timber frames were filled with turf, moss, clay, straw, and sometimes animal hair. Turf walls were especially effective because they blocked wind completely while trapping air inside the grass roots. Wind strips heat faster than cold alone, and Vikings built to stop it. For modern viewers, this translates directly into sealing air leaks and using dense insulation. Lightweight walls lose heat fast. Dense walls slow heat movement and store warmth. Draft-proofing a room often delivers more comfort than increasing heater output, exactly as Vikings discovered centuries ago. How sunlight became a quiet but powerful heating ally. Even in northern winters, Vikings paid attention to the sun. Living spaces were oriented to catch low winter sunlight. Dark floors, hearth stones, and walls absorbed this warmth and released it slowly after sunset. This still works today. Identify where winter sunlight enters your home and place thermal mass there deliberately. Stone tiles, brick walls, thick plaster, or even containers of water can store solar warmth. This requires no technology, only awareness and placement. Why animals were part of the heating system rather than kept separate. In many Viking settlements, livestock were housed in attached spaces or beneath living quarters. Animal body heat rose through wooden floors and thick walls, warming the human areas above. This heat source worked constantly, especially at night when temperatures dropped. Most people will not house animals indoors today, but the principle still applies. Heat-producing activities should be clustered. Kitchens, greenhouses, compost systems, and mechanical rooms all generate warmth. Place them adjacent to living spaces so their heat is reused instead of vented outdoors. Viking hearths worked with stone instead of fighting physics. When Vikings used fire, they used it strategically. Hearths were wide and low, often surrounded by stone. Fires burned hot and short, charging the stone with heat rather than filling the room with smoke and escaping warmth. Once the fire died, the stone continued radiating heat for hours. This principle lives on in masonry heaters and rocket mass heaters. Even simple steps, like placing stone or brick near a stove, dramatically improve heat retention. One controlled burn can outperform hours of constant feeding. Why compact spaces and low ceilings were essential to warmth. Viking homes were not tall or open. Ceilings were low, rooms were compact, and unused volume was minimized. Warm air stayed where people lived and slept. There was no wasted space to heat. Applying this today means zoning your home. Close off unused rooms during winter. Use heavy curtains to divide spaces. And, whenever possible, lower ceiling height with lofts or fabric partitions. Concentrated warmth lasts longer than dispersed heat. Here's how Viking ventilation preserved warmth without trapping moisture. Even with thick insulation, Viking homes were never sealed completely. Smoke holes and controlled airflow allowed moisture and stale air to escape slowly. Warm air exited at the highest point, while fresh air entered lower down. This prevented mold and sickness without draining warmth. Modern homes, though, often fail by sealing too tightly or ventilating too aggressively. Passive ventilation that moves air slowly preserves heat while maintaining healthy conditions, following the same logic Viking builders relied on. Why the Viking approach still outperforms many modern solutions. Vikings did not survive by burning more fuel. They survived by wasting none. Their homes were systems built around conservation, mass, and structure, rather than constant energy input. These principles still work because the laws of heat have not changed. If you value serious, field-tested wisdom like this, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom, share this with someone who cares about self-reliance, and help keep these lessons alive. The past still has practical answers for the present.